Can I use this one? Yes. Thank you very much for the very generous invitation. I know that we are kind of late coming here. I don't have many excuses other than that we have been very, very busy. But I think first we talked about this 4 years ago. But now we are here, so I hope we are okay. We are both going to show some projects. We have different offices. I will show several projects from Norway. And the main theme will be architecture in relation to site. I will try to discuss this topic. You might remember the Venice Biennale text, I think it's 4 years ago. This is like a prediction from Rem Koolhaas, and it can be interpreted in many ways. Maybe you can say it is a grievance, it's a grief, it's a sorrow in it that architecture is no longer connected to a specific site, or it can be interpreted as a manifesto that now everything is becoming one, and architecture is also becoming one, and everybody learns from everybody, and everything is industry-based. I will try to discuss this exact topic in the lecture. We see in our country and in the other countries we have worked in a development where the architect becomes less important, and more and more parts of a building is designed by other people, by the industry, by the contractor, maybe by other disciplines. This, for me, is very problematic. I think it is a development that does not give architecture its full potential. So we have tried to develop strategies to discuss exactly this development in the industry and in our profession, and how to get on the other side of this problem, how to deal with this problem. I will show you a little of our country discussing a very, very long tradition of how we deal with landscape. This is a typical fjord landscape. Is there a light on this one? Yeah. So these are some of the fjords. I will show some projects. One is here, one is here. This is 200 kilometers, and most of the Norwegian coast is like this, with maybe 100,000 islands and about 1,000 fjords like this. So this is the ocean coming in, and the mountains are quite steep everywhere. This area has been inhabited for about 10,000 years. So it looks basically like this everywhere, with the high mountains, with rock, with all the islands. This is the coastal Norway. This is the place where people first settled about 12,000 years ago, when the ice was reclining. And I think there has there has developed a mentality in the Norwegian society that you cannot, of course, not change this landscape. It's impossible for mankind to change it. Maybe you could do it today, but it is so monumental that you are always trying to find the place where you can live. You're trying to find a ledge where you can build your houses. You rather change the house than the landscape. This, I think, is the credo of the traditional Norwegian architecture. I think this credo has more or less become just history. It has been forgotten in modern architecture. We try to study how we can still make the landscape influence our architecture. I will talk about why we do this more later, but for me it is about respect for our globe. I think we are destroying our globe to such a degree that we as architects should be very careful about changing the landscape. So I think it is very important that we understand how we can build architecture without doing harm to the landscape and to the globe. This is just a few examples of how people made architecture in different cultures. I think wherever you go on the globe, you will find very intelligent architecture, the folk architecture. This is obviously the igloos of the Eskimos, which is a super intelligent way to build in this climate. You have very, very cold temperatures, then you make this home, which is made in a few hours, and it is possible to live there because of this ingenious structure, which is very easy to build, and then you have the warm area here, and then you move to another place where the fish is, and the ice moves with you, and you can build the new house another place. This is totally lost. I think this type of closeness to the material, to the site, is totally lost in most of modern architecture. You have exactly the same with the Bedouin tents, which is also super intelligent construction, and which keeps the inside cool even with its dark color. You have the Sherpa villages in Nepal, which are ingenious. They don't have chimneys. They place them where it is possible. It is in balance with the culture. Then we have our monumental traditions, at least in Europe. I think you have it everywhere, where you have powerful nations, where you discuss a geometry as architects, which is maybe not violent, but it is very strong. It dictates the landscape. It tells you, it tells the society how everything should be, and the site becomes changed. I think the very opposite way of changing a landscape in a very considerate way is exemplified by, for instance, this project, this is rice terraces from Nepal, which I admire a lot. I think this is a great example of how one can live with the landscape. I've been thinking about if you were an architect today and you got this commission, how would you solve it? Would you make 1 million drawings and divide it into small plots and make the drawings for every single place? Or would you find a better way to do it? And I think, of course, there are not millions of drawings of these terraces. They are just made by the knowledge that the people have and the intelligence that they have. And I think if you try to figure out what has been done, it is as simple as this. They must be horizontal because of the water and these things. And a pair of oxen, at least at that time, must be able to turn on each terrace. So the formula, the drawing for these terraces are something like this. This is the principle, and this is the formula. So if you have this knowledge, this is basically the knowledge that everyone has in their head, but it is not theorized, of course. But then it results in this super complex, very beautiful structure, which is very, very functional and has been there for hundreds of years. And it is not done in a very distant way like we usually make our drawings. We don't, sometimes we don't even visit the site when we make a project in our cultures in the West. I don't know about you. We have lost the connection with the site, I think, mainly. And we have, to a large degree, lost the connection between how we live, a good way to live, and how we build. When we started our office many years ago, we got a commission to build a road in a forest, and this sounds like a very, very small, stupid project, but we thought it was a beautiful task. It was a detour of about 500 meters into the forest for cars to stop. And we were thinking, how can we solve this problem? Then we thought that when you drive your car on these roads, usually you cut all the trees in where the road is, and you always have the sky above you. So you drive for hours like that on these roads, and you see the forest on this side and the forest on that side. And so we thought that maybe it will be interesting for these people to be inside the forest and not see the sky, and to drive around the trees. So we figured out, without drawing it on the paper, we were actually drawing it on the landscape. We figured out where the road could be, almost like a kind of a Japanese-inspired garden, where this was gravel. And there were lots of discussions with the local community, and the mayor, he thought it was very strange that the road was narrow and why is not the same width all the way. We made this section where the routes can be kept, and this is only the addition. And then after we had, in a way, thought out the concept, this became the shape of the road. So this is the main road, but here all the trees are kept in the middle of the road, like this. And where you drive, we made the protection for the trees, so the cars drive very slowly like this. And this is the instant Japanese garden. This is like the existing vegetation, existing trees. Super simple, very inexpensive, and done in a matter of weeks. And it, I'm not trying to boast, but it became so popular among the travelers that they had to take away the sign for the road. So because it became crowded. So this is how they drive. This is some of the elements that we put on, like the closet. This is the furniture for it. Basically, this is an example after we studied these rice terraces in Nepal. We tried to figure out if is it really possible to make architecture that does not have exact drawings but have instructions that are so precise that you get the result only from the instructions, not from the drawings. We have been experimenting with this always later, how our instructions as architects shape the possibilities of our architecture. This is one of our latest projects. It's a very different project with more resources. I will try to explain, and it's much more sophisticated. The technology is more sophisticated. Everything is more sophisticated. We have learned a lot in those years about how to put together pieces, how to make glass details, everything. Basically, in this project, we designed absolutely everything. It's almost nothing that comes from the shelf. We designed the doors, the handles, the kitchen, all the furniture, everything, except for some chairs we did not do. But everything else we did, and this I think is for an architect is very interesting. This is a cliff that is kind of loose. There is a problem in many Norwegian fjords that the rocks fall down into the water. So this is, of course, a problem here as well, but we studied the rock with experts, and they say it is solid. So this is how it looked when we arrived. It had a very nice rock face and a lot of nice trees, and this was the view. So basically, we talked with the client, and we wanted to keep all the qualities that were already there. So we made a house which almost is like a hand, and the trees are between the fingers, like this. So all the trees are there, like this. And we placed the rooms like orthogonal objects where they could be placed. This was our basic idea. And we also included the rock inside this room. And we didn't know exactly how to do it, but this was our plan. So we devised a system with wooden pillars that we cut like this, and then you turn it around, and then you get the wire from the same material. And it is hinged there and there, so you can work in any angle. This will stiffen all the facades. We had, I think, 52 facades around, so this is this one. But what we didn't know when we made the plan, where are the cracks in the mountain? Because we drilled deep down with steel, 1.5 meter, and if there was a crack, we had to move this pillar to another position. And this happened many times, but it was quite easy because we only moved this pillar to this position because there were cracks all the way and loose. So there it was okay. But nothing happened because the pillar is inside the glass. And in our design, we wanted the position of the pillar in a way to be nature, to be unpredictable, and not like a very stiff modular structure. So we thought it was okay to shift the position of the pillars to whichever position was possible. This is the rock inside. So this is the living room. This is the stair up to the master bedroom. And the other bedrooms are on a bridge up here. This is the dining area. So this was, of course, discussed a lot, and many people said this is impossible to do, and it will leak and everything. So we studied it a lot. How can we build the glass there? And I will come back to it. Here you can see the trees that are between. This is the glass bridge between the volumes. This area sometimes has very strong winds, like hurricanes, very strong hurricanes. So we have made. It's not shown here, but we have higher up. We have wires between the trees, so they do not move as much as they would otherwise. So that solves the problem of the closeness to the facade. All the windows are put only as glass panes in the horizontal profile here and the horizontal profile here. So we have the glass contractor that we have worked with for maybe 20 years, and he can do all these difficult things for us now, not in the beginning. So this window, we made two. We sawed into the mountain with a very big circular saw, which was on a rail, and we did it 2 cuts. And then we had a drainage in the bottom, and the stone in the middle was easily removed with the chisel. And then we inserted, so it looks like this. This is, by the way, our engineer that I mentioned to some of you that we have worked with a lot. And we have almost educated each other for about 25 years, I think. It is a great joy to work with very clever people that you can learn a lot from. And when you start a new project, sometimes it takes only a few minutes to get the information you need. I'm not very happy with working with super large. Some firms in Norway have like 10,000 employees, and you never know which guy you are talking to. And it's much better to have this personal knowledge. You have a history. It's almost like being married, and you only have to say maybe 1 or 2 words, and then you get the answer you are after. So this is the basic principle. This is the profile of the stone. This is the cut. This is the shape of the windows with the details, with the oak profiles. So this is the glass. How everything was adjusted. How the glass came in between the stone. We made a very detailed model to brace the glass from the outside, and this is how it was done by the steel workshop. So this is our drawing, and then in the end it looked like this, very minimal. This is the pillar which is inside the glass to carry the roof, and it goes almost half a meter into the stone. But this is massive, so it works. Just one more thing about this project is done only with a combination of CAD drawings and hand drawings. And we have the basic is a CAD drawing, and then we draw on the CAD drawing with hand sketches and 3D sketches and text. And the reason is that it is super fast. We can do such a drawing in 10 minutes, and we scan it and send it to the site. And if the site has a problem, we can respond immediately. We don't care about all these bureaucratic systems you use almost 1 day to get out a proper drawing for a public client, and we don't have time for this in such projects. And this means that you get other possibilities, architectural possibilities, that are not open to you when you use this bureaucratic system. Of course, we know it, and sometimes we have to use it, but I think it's a lost opportunity for architects that we don't protest against this type of bureaucratization of our profession. So this is our way to challenge the super complicated systems that we are forced to use in especially in large buildings. This is a hotel we made. We started in 2006, and we are still working with the hotel owner. So now we are building room 10, 11, and 12. But we have worked for him continuously since we started with this. And he's building, these are the first 7 rooms. So he's building a little by little. This is a river. The idea was very simple. Can we build a room that makes you feel that you are outside? This was the question that we wanted to answer. And so first we thought, okay, we will have one wall in glass, and everything will be the same material. We thought of wood. And when the wood was there, we saw that it reflected on the inside, on the glass. So we thought very quickly that we should paint it in a dark color, so it's almost black. And then it gave a very interesting effect, because you didn't see the glass from the inside, and it became almost like we had hoped. So this is the landscape with some of the first rooms. We said, because this is a protected area, it's a national reserve, so the authorities didn't want us to build anything there. So we said to them that, okay, we will build it in such a way that we can take away all the houses, and there will be no tracks from the building. So everything is built on very, very thin steel pillars, like 30 millimeters, and drilled down into the ground. So if you really wish to cut down the rooms, then it is possible, and there will be no traces other than the small holes in the rock. And so eventually they gave us allowed us to do that, but we could not cut any trees, we could not change anything, we could not make any roads. And we thought that was wonderful, so we didn't have the car outside the room. So it's like this. So this is, I think, we work also as landscape architects, but I think we would have a really hard time to make this really nice landscape. This was there already. And it's like a camera that is viewing the existing beauty. So this is a view from the room in the summer and the winter. So it was made in the winter only to not to destroy the landscape. And this is the foundation. Very thin. It's almost like acupuncture in the landscape. And then you can see that there is no bracing here. So what happened is that our engineer and when they had built everything, we knew that it would be little moving back and forth. So he was doing like this with me. And then we put tape. So then the blacksmith came the next day and put it on, and then it was stiff. Maybe one or two needed some extra bracing. But he said, no need to calculate, we can just do it by hand. So that's a very interesting engineer. So the details, I believe that how you, if you have this intention to make the room feel that it is open, the details are important. And it is important how you end the glass. Do you have like a profile from Sjuko or some big producer, or how do you do it? And we like to take full control of this and to talk with the glass producers and make our own profiles. And this is perfectly possible, and often it is more cheaper than the big systems. So this is the existing landscape that has become a garden. The foundations are so thin that when you are after about 40 years, you cannot see the foundations. You think it's a miracle in the ground. So this is this is a story about actually more or less about how do we build in the landscape without changing it at all. It is more difficult than I thought it would be. There are so many things that you have to do that are contrary to our laws and regulations. We are required to do this and that and to have water and everything, and all of these things have to be thought about. But in our opinion, it is absolutely possible to achieve it. I think that the role of the architect basically is the same as it has always been. I think we are in the position where we shape the change, the physical change of society, and this means that we also have a lot of moral responsibility. And I think it's not a discipline to be taken lightly, because everything that we do has consequence for how people live. And that is why I think we should learn everything we can learn about how to build, because everything we do has consequences. The industry we use, the solutions we use, everything. I am deeply skeptical to the big industries getting into building professions, because the decisions are more and more based on what big companies can earn and not what is good for human beings. So this is a project that is totally the different thing. This was made, we talked a little about it yesterday. I was 24 years, and my co-student, we were students while we were doing it, was 22 years, and we got the chance from one day to another to design a lepers hospital in India. We were actually going to Nepal to climb in the mountains, and they asked us, why don't you stay here for a year? And then we said, yes, we will do that. And we stayed there for a year, and they wanted us to start to design, and they said, the workers are coming in 30 days. We have all the materials, please make a design so we can start to work in 30 days. And we thought it was kind of quick, but we didn't know much about how long time it takes to design a building, so we said, okay, we will do that. So we ended up with this drawing. It's a very simple drawing. They said 70 people will come and dig by hand because they didn't have any machines. So we thought that to save some time, we will need to have the same width for all the buildings, all the rooms, and then we make a garden inside with water. And we will design this later. And then we will get time to design all the buildings, but all the buildings we found out could be approximately 4 meters wide. And so they, after 30 days, they started to dig the foundations and to make the plinth. And it was built in different heights. And because everything was done by hand, we had to save the soil. So basically the plinth was a result of the amount in sum that was dug out. So this was put into this area, and this was bought from a quarry, and this was the house. And this changed a lot from place to place. This is the kitchen. So we tried to be ahead of the workers and the masons and tried to be at least 1 or 2 days ahead of their work. And we only had hand drawings. We didn't have a copy machine. So the same drawing that we were working on in the afternoon, it became the working drawing the next morning. We also bought, we had one ruler that we had with us from Norway, and we bought a ruler in the bazaar. And then after a while we saw that for 30 centimeters it was 6 millimeters difference. So we could not use the same ruler for the same drawing. But of course that did not matter at all, because this was just a representation. And we built the things little by little. This is a place for a tree. There is a tree here. These are the guys we worked with. We had 5 teams with masons working like this. It was unbelievably cheap. I think it cost $130,000, everything, for 1 year with 70 people. And I don't understand how it was possible, but we got a lot of waste material. We were buying this material with the contractor, So after a while, we started to make all the rooms for the different functions: the doctor, the nurses, the laboratory, everything. So it became like a story that you tell beside the fireplace. You start with something and you don't know the end of it. And eventually it was finished, but it looked like this. And every day we went there with the motorcycle and talked with the masons. They thought we were quite young, and after a while we understood that we didn't have a mustache, none of us, and so we had to grow a mustache. And luckily I got a nice mustache after just a few weeks. But my colleague, his beard was growing very slowly, so he was kind of mocked by the masons because they called him child because he didn't have this mustache. So it was important in this building project to have a mustache, and sometimes it's important to have some kind of mustache in every building project as an architect. So this is the drawing for that one. It was really nice to work with these guys. We learned a lot from them. We didn't know these details. So basically, we asked them, how do we do this? How do we do this? How wide is a window? wall, and so on. And they told us, I think they were proud to tell us how things were done. And this is the bathroom. This is the interior of the nurse's apartment, other kitchen, and the windows. And of course we got a little bored after a while doing this project, so we ended up doing a lot of different windows. So this is one window, and then another window, and then another window, and so on. So it became a lot of, I think, 50, 60 different windows, but of course it did not cost more. It only cost the same, because it was not made by a big industrial corporate conglomerate that wants to sell 10,000 of the same window. It was a carpenter working on the site, and he only used his time. And the stones were there, and so it was only up to us to make the different designs. So I will give the floor to Siri Moseng, and she will show a project that is in the same project that I showed first, the road, the National Tourist Road. It has been a big project in Norway, and I think that they have had a lot of competitions, and your office won a competition, and you will show this project.
Okay. I worked together with Jan Olav for my first 5 years after I finished my school, and also with other architects. And one of the first projects I was involved in was also making one of the tourist stops that the national road departments are doing as a big national project, improving the situation for tourists along the roads in Norway. And after 5 years, me and another colleague from JSA decided we will do a competition because they where the National Tourist Department had used the old guys for a long time, and they decided to look for younger architects. But I also consider myself as part of that tradition that the JSA represents, and that those 5 years of 5 first years of working was very formative for how we work in our office. This was a very small project. It has had a very low budget, hardly any money at all compared to some of the other tourist road projects. It was quite an overwhelming sight for us. This is all the way up to the top of Norway. I had never been there before. The first time I was there was at the site visits. And if you set out with a boat from this beach, the first land you will meet is the North Pole. And on this beach, the whales come and they roll around and take off their lice, is it called that? They kind of clean themselves, the big whales on this beach. And it's really far to the city. You kind of leave the civilization driving on this very, very narrow, small road into an Arctic landscape where everything grows very slowly and is very vulnerable. So me and Kaja, my partner, we got really scared when we got here and really humble. How is it possible to do anything in a landscape like this? But we had an assignment. It was to make a place for all the cars driving, because it was very popular for foreign car tourists to come here to stop. They stopped the cars everywhere. They threw litter in the landscape. They needed places to go to the bathroom. They needed places to put their small grills to make dinner outside in the landscape. So our commission was to facilitate a place for that, and in order to preserve the nature and kind of put the tourist into one organized place. So the competition was very wide. Just everywhere you see in this landscape, pick a place and make your place. And as I said, we were really worried about doing anything, and decided to try to minimize our footprints in this landscape. That was one thing, and another thing was, how do you start with a place like this at all? Where should you start to work? So, this is the beach and the sea to the North Pole. So we maybe it's also part of our personality, but we got very narrow-sighted. We decided to not interfere with the big landscape room, but just to find a spot that was already changed a lot of times, which was the pile of stones that was close to the road. There were no vegetation to disturb. It was moving all the time. Also, these are rocks that were under the ice while the ice moved. So we found interest in this place. We thought it could be a place that could be easily changed without destroying anything, and also thought that maybe it could be possible to use that material that is on that site to create a place. Because we had an idea not to bring a lot of, say, foreign material into the site, not pour concrete, not do things that would change the feeling of the site that much. So we tried to think about how can we build with what is there. We decided to use those stones. You can put one in your hand. They had different sizes, but so this stone was that local stone in that local pile, and we're thinking, can we use that stone to build? And the gravel next to it was also the local gravel from the quarry. It was quite far away, but it was the closest quarry. So we were thinking about a project that could reduce amount of material and use the resource on the site. So we used quite a lot of time with, this looks like me excavating, but we spent a lot of time on field research and looked at how deep the pile of stone were, how big different sizes of stones, and measured everything, and did a lot of registrations along this pile of stone to look for the right place to position our our parking space and the facilities. And from that kind of registration, we found a place that would work, which had the right depth and the right amount of stones and the right size of the stones to use it. And we started to work on a site plan based on the position of the stones. And then we also worked with trying to think about how can we use the stone as a building component, and very quickly came up with the idea of making containers. We have a tradition of that in Norway, using small containers with stone and building up walls to contain pressure from dirt from the back. But we were trying to make an easy system that can contain the stones, but that could be also easily opened up and release the stones when the project at some point maybe was not supposed to be there anymore. So we were studying really closely how this net, and it's a net of steel, and it's a steel net that's used in concrete for reinforcement of the concrete. So because it was supposed to be cheap, we had to look for a standardized product to use for the containers. And started working on circular elements and how these containers could keep the stones in place. And we also had that Jan Olav's other marriage with the engineer. He was very much part of this project as well, and we started to work with him on how could these nets be produced easily. And this is also part of that registration of the whole pile of stone in general, because it had a lot of edges that was some of them were quite steep, and some of them had rocks growing into it, and some of them had grass growing into it. So it was also part of getting to know the pile of stones and trying to avoid changing something dramatically, and also trying to find spots for how the stopping point could enter, how people from the stopping point could enter into the landscape. Because a lot of people, of course, would like to take walks on the beach and in the scenery elsewhere. So from that idea of the material as a building resource, we started to develop the project by thinking about the stones as something that you gently push aside and gently move towards the edges and make place for people to come into it. And the program, as I said, was quite simple. It was to make a place along the narrow road to stop. Some of the cars were also huge housing cars. I don't know this word in English, but you drive, and in the back you have like a camping trailer. So we started to make kind of small rooms for each trailer to kind of make them a place by themselves with a seating facility connected to it, so that they could go out and have breakfast and cook their dinner outside. And then one part of it was also to have a toilet facility, and of course places for them to throw litter. And everything was based on using the rock that was pushed aside inside the containers to make room for the program that we used. Yeah, so this is the plan during the process, where you can see the containers. Oh yeah, sorry. And the nice thing about working with these circular containers is that we were free to create any kind of. Do you hear me now? Free to create any kind of geometry. Just use it. Okay. It's like a long chain, and we could move it easily around if we needed to. The containers got more and more stiff, the more curved it could work together as a stiff curved line. So with the stones we created the plan. It was not really important to us how the geometry was. More importantly, that we could use the stone to make certain rooms and make some kind of privacy for each car that stopped in this place, and kind of make it like a protected and private place for everyone. And this is the plan of the toilet, which was inside the pile of stones, also made with the containers of stone, and 2 toilet restrooms. And then we wanted to use just simple tiles of concrete, so that you don't have to pour it in there, but you can move it. You could lift it by hands and move them and move around. So it had no foundations that needed to be there. And the only visible thing from the road would be the hat in glass and steel that was disconnected from the containers of stone, and it had its own pillar and its own glass roof, and it was an open toilet, so it was never heated, and it was low maintenance, which was important at this place. And we developed the structure with Finn-Erik, the engineer, and the steel roof, and how to make it stiff and disconnected from the pile stones. And then we were doing some tests or some ideas about how people could sit and use the facilities for the eating, and kind of like making a very small home for them next to their mobile car. And we were giving ourselves different kinds of situations. For instance, laying down in a bed, sitting next to your loved ones, having your whole family lay down in a big bed, 2 couples eating together, big family, and so on. And these elements we worked on as steel elements, like this, and they were also tried to make them as the edge between the gravel that we had pushed, where we had pushed away as stones, and the rest of the stone pile. And these are some other ideas for the seating elements in connection with the containers for the stone, and also the different chains of how these would work. How we would put the containers together to work as a stiff chain that would need no other anchoring or no other foundations than just the heaviness of themselves. And I'm showing this because I know that students will be going to the national park, and you will be working on a assignment for a place where tourists come. And we have a lot of these sites in Norway. Some are small, like this one, and some are very big and facilitate a lot of people. But I think it doesn't matter how big the program is. What matters is how you look upon the place that you are in. How do you want people to interact with the place, and how do you want to protect the place? And how do you want them to engage in the nature that is there already, and what kind of atmosphere and resources do you find in that specific place? This project is waiting in line to be realized, but it's been a lot of bigger projects has been realized, among others some of Jan Olav's and Peter Sumtor and other names that have made bigger projects in the National Tourist Road. But we hope that there will be money to also make this very small stopping point in the future in the northern Norway. I don't know about the time now, if we will stop and continue, because I wanted to show the students. 10 more minutes. Yeah, because I also wanted to. I was very happy to see the film in the beginning of the lecture showing you or the students working on real building experiments, because I wanted to show a project that I do with my first-year students at the Oslo School of Architecture every fall. They come to the school quite young, and many of them have no experience in building. Many of them have no experience in drawing or making a project. But many of them have quite strict ideas about what is architecture. Maybe they have seen high-rise buildings from Dubai, or some great museums in the world, and geometries that they are in their heads. So what we do the first semester at school is that we let them by themselves experience what it is like to start with an idea, develop the idea, try to think about how to realize it, how can I build this, and then in the end they build the project by themselves. So this is a project going on for 8 weeks, and they work in groups of 3 because it's impossible for them to lift and carry everything by themselves. So that is also a good experience to work in teams and not think about architecture as a solitary thing. And we are not so lucky like you to have real places to build. So we have a nice big hall at the school, which is the site for our students to make their projects. And the students, every year we make up a new plan for them, a new site. This project was made 2 years ago by the students, and we told them, you get 1 plot each. You are to make a route in this, call it landscape, this room. Every plot is a little different. Every plot has some kind of atmosphere to it that is different from everybody else, a geometry that is different from everybody else. So there are 20 routes, and they were told to make a bridge. So they all made their personal bridge from red point to red points. And then they also got a number of words to make them start to think about what can my project deal about, like a program. And the program, for instance, could be make a light tunnel, make a wandering with a good view, make an intimate passage, make a walk of balance, make a route for 2, and so on. So they worked, first of all, in models in 1 to 20 scale in their group, trying to develop their project based on their sites and on their program. And of course, we wanted everything to work well together, but we also told them to work individually for a couple of weeks to kind of get their own personal idea, getting more realistic. And then they started to work all together in this hall. These are my 2 colleagues by the finished projects. We have collaboration with concrete factories, 6 concrete factories in Oslo or around Oslo, where the students get to cast their elements. They are building the form by themselves at the school. They bring the forms to the concrete factory, and then they work on reinforcing the concrete. Here's from one of the concrete factories, putting all the reinforcements in it, and they have to think about everything about practicalities, how to lift it, where to put the anchors, how to in which direction should they pour the concrete in to make it work, and so on. So it's really a dig into a real life production of architecture. And then the day come, and in one day all the concrete elements are being lifted into the big hall at the school, and then they start to work with the wood and the projects, and they're trying to make everything stand, not fall apart, which is also quite hard for them and quite scary for us as teachers as well. We're always very relieved when this project is over and nobody is hurt. And then in the end, they end up with their own individual idea of a bridge. This is, I think these were working with a airy step as a program, and there were other bridges that the students work with. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. It's, of course, it would be very nice if this could be placed somewhere and be good for other people than just the students and our school. But so far we don't have the facility and the economy to do it. But we are very happy that the teachers and also the principal, Ole Gustavsen, came by our exhibition and took many of these home to his garden, and now they are working as garden furniture to him. Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you you very much for an impressive lecture, and we wish very much to have enough time for a Q&A session. But professor have to leave us for the airport, and they need to see the students before. So please forgive us to have to end this session. And thank you all for coming, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.